Ricardo Diaz, Scott Dossett, Diane Gottheil, Mikhail Yubansky, Megan McGinty, Grace Mitchell, and Ivy Williams.
I wanted to report to you that the Fresh Start program has completed their first call-in. It took place at the Illini Terminal on the 4th floor a few weeks ago. And at that call-in, I was able to be present, as were some other members of the community. And at the call-in, I believe 9 individuals were invited to participate. And at the end of that call-in, they were given an opportunity to stop the shooting, to seek assistance from the social work specialist that was present, and to begin the journey to participate in the ending of gun violence. It's my understanding that 7 of the 9 were that evening interested in participating in the support program, and that number alone is a huge success. Other cities that have engaged in that kind of work would wish for that kind of response. Since that evening, it's come, and 2 additional persons have gone ahead. I'm sorry, 6, and then 2 more, 6 and 8. And now that it appears that the 9th person is also interested in participating in the program. So that could result in a 100% agreement to participate. So we continue to hope that that program will have significant success in those individuals' lives and in reducing gun violence in the communities. At this point, they're going to begin the process of assisting them through the journey, of providing them the support that's necessary. And I believe that they also have a grant that they have received, and at some point they will be looking for a coordinator for the program. So they're off and running, and the first call-in has taken place. It was a very moving experience. It was a challenging experience for everyone present, but it is a moment where the community is really attempting to face this issue in a very powerful way. The next item that I wanted to report out to you is that Katie, our circuit court clerk, Katie Blakeman, spearheaded the Champaign-Urbana's first annual expungement summit, and it took place this last Saturday. It took place in I can't imagine a more perfect venue. They chose Stone Creek Church. It was very accessible, very hospitable, and a neutral place for people to attend. 1,000 people registered, and it was very organized and orderly. People had appointments. There was a huge turnout of attorneys that were pre-trained. They were there to assist people with the preparation and the filing of their expungement petitions. The Champaign Sheriff's Office did fingerprinting, completed fingerprinting for individuals before that date, and then when they were reaching capacity, the Urbana Police Department stepped forward and processed a significant amount in order to make sure that everybody would be ready for that event. There were also some individuals that flew in or drove long distances since they had convictions here, and the expungement would have to take place here, and were able to complete that process. And of course, all of these will then eventually go to a judge for review. There were some individuals that heard about the event the day of or just a few days before, and of course were not able to register or have the documents that they needed. So it is the hope that we'll have it again next year and that they will be able to participate at that time. The another feature that was very helpful for those individuals that were not able to register ahead of time is in the adjacent hall, we had a resource fair for them. And so the Human Relations Office was present on behalf of the CPRB and the HRC. And the city of Champaign was my counterpart, Rachel Joy, in the Community Relations Office was also present, as were the Secretary of State's office, the United States Passport Agency, Rosecrans, and a ton of other providers, all there to help anyone that came in with any resources they might need. We did a lot of outreach in terms of non-discrimination in Urbana based on prior arrest and conviction. And we, of course, invited them to let us have their contact information so that we can notify them as soon as we hear about the next expungement fair. I cannot share with you the amount of interdependency and collegiality. It really is going to help a significant amount of people move forward and have some of those convictions erased, those that qualify, and to move forward. Are there any questions on either one of those updates? Yeah. Yes, yes. Yes, they were present.
Will we find out what number of the 1,000 or so petitions will get approved by the judge?
I don't know, but I will definitely ask, and I don't know what the follow-up reporting will be, but I will ask Katie and the other coordinators at some point if we can have the outcomes from that particular outreach. Again, I cannot. It was very impressive to see that. You know, there were some setbacks, of course. You know, we ran a little bit. We still, like when you go see the doctor, sometimes the doctor starts running a little behind, but it was extremely orderly and well planned out. And there was a panel in the worship area, and Senator Scott Bennett was present, Representative Carol Ammons was present, Alderman Aaron Ammons was present, and a team of members from the First Followers program were present, and they all delivered an outstanding presentation to the individuals that were present waiting for their turn in line, talking about what led us to this point to be able to have one. People shared their stories, having difficulty moving past the convictions that they've had, that sort of branding and red scarlet letter, and how important it is to be able to move past, especially when people have completed their time and or completed probation and all the other requirements of the criminal justice system. It was extremely moving to hear that kind of testimony. Not only was it moving for government officials and social service providers, I saw a critical mass among those persons that were waiting for their turn to share their story. I have a conviction for, people sharing, I have a conviction, it's for such and such, and and I'm really interested in moving forward was sort of the theme. And I always forget what coming out stories do for people and sharing in terms of creating awareness and healing and courage to move forward. So there was a lot of hope and courage, and we'll see how those outcomes turn out. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, just a quick note. I heard about this on the radio. I was listening to Clerk Beckman, I guess maybe that's how we refer to her. And she talked about special arrangements that they had made to cover some of the fees for doing some of the legal work that needs to be done in this. And I thought that was a real thoughtful addition to all the rest of the really great planning that they had done. So kudos to them.
Yeah. Are you referring to the actual waiver of the court filing fees? Yes, they had waivers so that those that qualify, so that income or the fee was not a barrier to the processing. I have two very brief mini presentations that I'd like to make. The first is that we were able to successfully attend the NACOL conference this year, and the chair attended, our new member, Mikhail, attended, and I attended. And that pretty much was our budget for this year. I look forward to sending another delegation next year so that Urbana is well represented, both to support the community of civilian oversight, but also to receive information and best practices. We are in the process of preparing a binder for each of you that will contain the PowerPoints of all of the presentations. I almost have the master binder finalized, and once it is finalized, then Tony will copy it for each of you and bind it. In front of you, I have distributed the daily schedule of the conference, and you'll receive PowerPoints for each of those presentations. The chair and Mikhail and I attempted to divide some of these presentations so that we would be able to, at least one of us, attend some of them. However, some of the more focused ones, we attended all three of us to make sure that we really understood what the takeaways were for our process and for the city. I'd like to take a moment to share with you one of the key publications that has come out of the conference. It turns out that the National Association of Civilian Oversight of Law Enforcement Agencies partnered with OJP Diagnostic Center, which is a part of the Data-Driven Justice Solutions Project. And they produced a memorandum that refreshes the current and latest environment around civilian oversight. And so you have a very brief 18-page summary. And one of the neat things that that I thought is that we receive a mention. So if you'll turn to page 10, you'll see that in the model for civilian oversight, we are with Albany, Indianapolis, Urbana, St. Petersburg, and San Diego, California. As you also calling your attention to page 13, I wanted to introduce to you, as this report is NACOL attempting to outreach and educate the nation on where we are. This is actually a smaller report of a larger report that they're finalizing and hope to publish within, I think, the next 6 months. What you'll see on page 3 are the dimensions of oversight, and I thought that this would be very valuable for all of you. That the 5 common goals of civilian oversight programs are to improve public trust, to ensure accessible complaint procedures, to promote thorough, fair investigations, to increase transparency, and to deter police misconduct. I am very pleased that as I reflected on those common goals, I believe that our process here in Urbana is making significant impact in each of these areas. We have always work ahead, and we'll have an opportunity to continue to assess where we are and where we're headed. And that'll be the subject of some future dialogue that we'll be able to have after the new year in 2017. One of the things that I walked away from as we were at the conference is, although there are general categories that civilian police review boards can be categorized into, there was such a diversity of oversight bodies that were really hybrids. And even ours has some hybrid elements to it. And so you find various boards engaging in forward policy development, and we did that. We did that in the area of the TASER review policy and some direct oversight. And we now do that in our TASER review hearings. Some of them are appellate bodies, as we are. And in some of the bodies, you have the staff support, or my role, engaging in liaison work between the police department and the board, and coordinating inclusion in decision making and dissemination of best practice. So in many ways, although we do fall as an appellate body categorization, we have already dimensions that borrow from some of the other models. I was able to attend one of the recent public town hall meetings that the city of Champaign is conducting to gain input on the development of the board that they might end up with. And they communicated some of the information from Nate Cole in terms of the various categories. And I saw them sort of working through what would be a model that would work for their situation and what elements to draw from the various models. One of the things that I did see, and I'd like to give the chair and Mikhail an opportunity to share a little bit some of their takeaways. But before I do that, I wanted to share 3 of mine. One is I have already developed some wonderful contacts and partnership opportunities with our sister civilian oversight bodies throughout the United States. Many of the large cities were present. Many of the cities of our size are present, and we've already begun to do some information sharing. A large focus of this particular conference was building rapport among the oversight bodies. There was a lot of card sharing. This year, I saw chiefs of police present discussing some of the initiatives that they are engaging in, and by attending this conference, learning from the oversight practitioners. I saw in this particular conference a lot more is being done in the area of data collection, data analysis, and collaboration with the police department around quality review. What does the data tell us about where we are? And finally, I wanted to share with you that there were moments at the conference where some members felt that urgency. There is a national tension out there among law enforcement officers about the heightened levels of scrutiny and the public discomfort and trust, and heightened levels of tension among marginalized communities or minority communities. And that at this moment in time when interactions are occurring all of the time, what can be done to really move civilian oversight forward at a time when it's really needed to ensure public trust and to ensure constitutional policing. The Department of Justice was also present. Many members of that conduct investigations into places like Ferguson, New Orleans, Albuquerque, had a discussion about some of the things they look at and some of the things that they're concerned about. And there was a strong refrain that I love to hear, and it was really good to hear there, that law enforcement must always be legitimate, it must have procedural justice, and it must be constitutional. And so that is something that I'm going to be looking forward to messaging within some of the work of the Human Relations Office, and of course some of the messaging from our office. Finally, the last large takeaway is information sharing, and I'm sure that Mr. Scott Dawsey will agree with this. Increasing the resource sharing of our website and our outreach and our information sharing. And so there's going to be an opportunity to continue to add more and more data so that the public understands what we're doing, how we're having an impact, and how we're touching some of these goals that are being outlined. I'd like to give the chair an opportunity and Mikhail an opportunity to impromptu sort of share some of their takeaways.
I think one of the main takeaways that I had was the fact that we had an opportunity to look at how civilian police review boards are handled around the country. This happened to have been my third one that I attended, and many of the contacts that I had made during the first one were still very much involved. I think one of the things it allowed me to do is look at how we function in comparison to some of the civilian review boards that are similar to us. The scope of responsibility is so wide ranging amongst them. Some of the boards actually do an investigation, whereas we become a board where we look at appeals that people might have. So networking with boards and looking to see that the police in many states were actually involved in showing how they were addressing the needs of the community. Another strong piece was dealing with community, reaching out to communities and having community input, which was extremely important to me. It never fails that in the ones that I have attended in the past, it was always a specific case that was being handled. This case was where two policemen had shot someone. You know, they shot a man who was living up in the hill. He was like a homeless person. There was the other case that was in Washington, in Seattle, where a man that was an Indian, a Native American, had gotten shot. And these cases were going on at the very same time that we were all there in that city, you know, at this convention. So it let us, we talked to the chief of police, you know, he was there, he was one of the presenters actually at one of the sessions. It's an exciting experience, you learn a lot. You know, it always to me allows us to compare where we are, where we can go and how we can go, you know, to make our civilian police review board have more impact on what we do. One of the things we are members of NATO. We are currently doing trainings, are we not to be trained? When do we turn in those slips?
We turn them in at the end of the conference.
Okay, and therefore training.
Mhm.
Training to be training for specific functions within the overall civilian police board network, period. So, but Alex said that he had gotten information from each of the sessions that we had gone to. They were all very, very interesting. Very, very interesting. Except that we, you know, there's always a little mess up in things that you do when you go through there. Bless Alex Hart, you know, he told me he'd get to Bloomington in a half an hour. So we all got here at a certain time. I'm telling you. So we all got here, and you know, Mel said, "We must be driving pretty fast." You know, we're gonna be going really fast. So we're driving along, and then you know we realized, well, it's more than a half an hour. So we only missed our flight by a couple of seconds. It wasn't long, you know. So they were nice. They allowed us to get through and not have to pay to send another 25 hours or whatever it costs. They got Miguel and they paid for a piece of luggage, which he always takes on the plane with him. And we didn't get there much later. We actually got the next flight by now. So Alex now learned one thing out of all of this, that it takes more than 30 minutes to get to Bloomington. Okay? Okay.
All right. Well, I took down a few notes while Alex was talking. I'm not sure that these are the full highlights, but it's what comes to mind at the moment. I think the first thing that struck me as I started to talk to folks is just how long the history of oversight is. I figured that it has been around for a little bit of time before Urbana formed a board. But I didn't realize how long, and I'm not sure exactly what I was saying, but on the first day I remember speaking with somebody from Milwaukee and kind of observing that, oh, look, you know, like, I remember what it was. The board, Nicole, has been around for 22 years. I'm like, well, it's remarkable that there's been civilian oversight for 22 years. That really dates back quite a bit. And she said, well, it doesn't date back very long. Milwaukee's been doing civilian oversight since 1910. I'm like, okay, well, I guess there's a longer history there than I thought. The second thing that I kind of noticed was what an incredibly diverse space that was. and we're, I think, somewhat used to thinking about diversity in terms of racial diversity, but and it was very racially diverse. And there was incredible age diversity from, what were clearly college students to others who were in their retirement years, covering the full range. Diversity in terms of their job role, from doing various things in the community to law enforcement. Diversity in terms of states, diversity in terms of nation states represented. So just a lovely space in that way. I was impressed to see a number of examples of, really progressive policing. When I sort of think about the way that I would like law enforcement to look like in our community, it's always, in some ways, been a fantasy. I could only picture what was in my imagination. But there were police chiefs from a variety of places who were talking about doing policing in the way that I would like to see policing done, and that was just I didn't know that was happening, so that was really good to see. And that's contentious, because I, as I understand it, part of the contention is around how friendly the Nate Cole is with some of the representatives from law enforcement, right? Like it's a little too friendly. So I don't know how exactly that plays out, but for me, it was good to see them there and talking about the things that usually we're the ones really talking about. One of the things that I got out of many of the Department of Justice presentations was just the importance of not just identifying the civil rights violations, but also sticking around to monitor and just track follow-through. It seems like that's the less exciting, less glamorous part of the work, probably more expensive part of the work, but it seemed clear to me that if that wasn't happening, we weren't really going to see change. And then the last thing was actually something that overlaps with something that Alex said. It was good, from my point of view, to hear how much attention there was to, sort of the idea of procedural justice, that the goal of law enforcement should not be to control the person and or control the situation, but to figure out how to negotiate that situation in a way that's a win-win, in a way that respects and takes into consideration all of the different needs of all of the different people. So it seems like a meaningful shift from sort of traditional, conventional law enforcement. So that's what I've got.
Any questions?
Yeah, thanks for reviewing that, guys. I appreciate that. And actually, what I have to say beyond that, Alex, is just a request. Instead of getting a pile of paper, can I get a PDF file I can read?
Oh, of course. Oh, for your binder?
For the binder?
Yes, of course.
Yeah. Thank you.
Any other requests for a PDF? It's going to be around 99 pages. What I can do is once it's finalized, I can send it out as a PDF. And then if you would like a printed version, we'll print 3 copies just so we have one for our archive. And then if anyone wants their paper version, we can go ahead and print a paper version. Okay, thank you. So in front of your screen, I want to take in front of your screen, you're going to see a, hopefully it's, you can see it. I'd like to take a moment to celebrate where we are. And so in the city of Urbana, we have had 9 taser displays. Of those 9 taser displays, none of them was the device actually energized. We have completed their timely review of all of them and found no need to issue recommendations for changes to the chief of police. There is, and this is of course since the introduction of the tasers. We have one taser display that you will see at the very top that's open, and that is one that involves that was an energized. And in that situation, the individual is in a court proceeding, and so we are holding until that court proceeding is resolved. And so my guess is that we will be able to review that taser display on January 25th, which is the next time that we meet. Since that time, we have had one more additional taser display, and that happened on August 25th. And we review taser displays in a grouping and not individually. So that one's on hold. Now, most recently, on a couple of weeks ago, we had two more taser displays. That's October 12th and October 13th. And those are going to be, those videos are being redacted. One of them's already finalized, and the police reports are being redacted. They should be completed sometime in the first or second week of November. Once those are completed, then copies of all of the police reports will be transmitted to you, and as well as the video, so that you can review them. And on January 25th, we'll have an opportunity to conduct another taser review, and we'll have 3 cases, potentially 4 cases. The 4th case being the one that you see up at the top. And as I mentioned, the last 2 happened in the a week and some days ago. As you will see, in 2016, we have had one taser display that we've decided, the one that's on hold, and then most recently the 3. And in all of those, only one of them was the device energized. The police have shown an incredible amount of restraint, an incredible amount of appropriate use. And when you have an opportunity to review the most recent ones, you'll have an opportunity to evaluate the compliance with our policy. We are in an opportunity where we are going to conduct finalize a taser review of our process, a review of our taser review process. And that will take place sometime after the next taser review, which will be January 25th. At that time, we will have at least about 14 reviews that we have conducted, and then we'll have an opportunity to see if there's any need to tweak our process. The police department has asked that in the event that we have numerous taser displays and it becomes overwhelming, whether we would consider moving to random sampling. And so that's something that we can discuss after January. I would imagine that would be a case where we were seeing 3 or 4 tasers per month. Then we'd have to look at, in terms of volume, how we would handle that. The only issue that I think led to that request is that on occasion with the video, we have to bleep out anything that's private or confidential, and then we have to bleep out faces, and it involves, depending on the length of the videos, it can become a very time-consuming process. At this point, we've been able to handle the load in terms of time to do that. What usually happens is that the lieutenant assigned to taser reviews will watch the video, and at every point where something needs to be bleeped out, he'll make a notation. Then that's transmitted to our videographer, and then he goes through with the pen or the device and then bleeps out every single time. There, as I said, it hasn't been a problem other than in one case in which there were, I think, 4 videos for one incident. There was a taser display video, and there were, I think, 3 squad car videos. And for some reason, they didn't check with me, and they just started redacting. And I said, well, we only needed the one video and the one squad car that had the best view. The other video, we could just not redact. We could have it available if there was something inaudible. And so we've made that little tweak so that they don't have to do all that work, especially if we're not going to watch all of those videos. They are available, though, should we need them, should something fall into question. So at this point, the process has been going very well, and as you'll see from this report that's on the screen, we haven't had any spikes or surges in the displays. And again, the ones that are going to be forthcoming to you within the next 3 weeks, you'll have a chance to look at over the Thanksgiving break and the Christmas break, so that we can jump into their review on the 25th. Any questions about TASER reviews?
Just so I understand what you're saying and try to remind myself about the lexicon, we have a display and we have a discharge. So when you say energize, the officer is instructed, and the reason they turn it on immediately is to begin the video and audio recording process. But only if they pull the trigger does it actually fire the probes.
Correct.
So we had a discharge
Yes.
during the
one.
course of a TASER event.
Yes.
Okay, that's the first one that we've had.
Yes.
So that will be interesting to see, both in terms of technically what we can tell how it worked, as well. A lot of the video has sort of been 2 LED lights on the floor, and I'm not wishing for more than that. I'm wishing for even less than that. But it will be interesting to see what we can learn about officer behavior and citizen behavior when we actually see a discharge. I mean, I've seen them used before at the Citizens Police Academy. I think maybe some people are going to do that this year from the board on campus. So that's the first thing I have. The second thing I have, rather than, at least now, think about any kind of sampling, I'd like for us to really consider what are the essential attributes to the TASER use policy that we need to be reported to us. For example, the kind of overkill video from the squad cameras and stuff like that. I think our dedication to the citizens of Urbana is to stay on this 100% for a little while longer. So, and I know that's not being brought up, but I'll just make it my preference that if there's any way we can streamline. I mean, obviously the officers are asked to fill out the written report that was developed. There's a standard police report that goes together, and so maybe all that we might need to satisfy our commitment to the community is that information that's already available and easy to redact, and the TASER video itself, are some mix of those things. So, thanks.
Thank you. And we've already corrected the misunderstanding. The guidance is that all you have to redact initially is that the video from the TASER device, and then the video from the squad car with the best angle and audio view. And then the other video can remain unredacted should we need it. And that should ensure that we do not have an unmanageable workload. I think that the concern, I know the concern was when they had to redact all those, when they started to redact all those videos, the thought was, if we have 3 in a month, that's going to be a heavy burden. But we're not having that concern yet, so I completely agree. We'll defer any kind of. I just wanted you to know that I had received the request. Related to that, I wanted to mention to you that as you were speaking, something came to me.
That's right. That's all right. Everyone's mind wanders when I speak, Alex. So.
Oh, I'd like to briefly discuss one item with you that I really could use your input. I have received a question from the police department that if the device is unholstered, and what triggers the audio and video feed is, of course, when the device is moved from out of safety. And so the question that I received was, when an officer unholsters a device and removes the safety mechanism, does that then constitute a display or a use that then the board wants to know about, so that it can review it? And especially in circumstances where it's not, so it's unholstered, the safety is removed, the video and the audio trigger, and the person does not see it, and it's not aimed at the person. How does the board feel? Should it be notified, and should it be docketed for review? My general feeling is, if the device is unholstered and it's the safety mechanism is disengaged, and the video and audio record, there's been some kind of decision that the situation might warrant it. And at that point, it is important to look at, because part of what the policy addresses is the situation warrant the use of the device? And I was wondering if I could get feedback on your thoughts, especially the more senior members, or additionally the more senior members.
I would say that at this point that we look at everything, we review everything. I mean, it's still very early in our policy and in the department getting the tasers. And I mean, if it becomes a tremendous load for them or for us, then we can reconsider this issue. But I don't think there's any question that we should not review everything.
I agree.
I agree also. That keeps with the transparency and our obligation to the community. Because as we know, this was a really difficult decision, and it was a hard conversation to have with the community, and we made them some particular assurances. And it kind of goes along with the communication piece, where the officer, they came and he spoke with you, and they realized they didn't have to do all three. My concern with having to go back and then try to change the TASER process because it could be too tedious or too much work. I don't think that should be the first piece, because we could get into the habit of starting precedences, which starts making us a little lax on the process, which allows us to steer away from what we have assured the community that we would do. And we don't want to do that. So it might be work, but it's going to cost open communication, so we can make sure that we're cutting back on the right processes versus trying to make it easier for the sake of our jobs. That's just not the main reason I would want to make the changes for the TASER policy. So.
Yeah, I don't know, obviously, haven't reviewed these cases, but my instinct is that we should take a look at it. And it's informed by actually something that happened in the conference, which was the folks from Harvard talking about the after effects of the Henry Gates case, and how Officer Crowley, that one of the things he did was he took out his handcuffs, and he did it with the intention of de-escalating the situation, because in his experience in the past when he's done that, it de-escalated the situation. And of course, in that particular case, it escalated the situation. So I'm wondering if there is a possibility that police officers will use tasers in the hope of de-escalating the situation, right? To take it out, to take off the safety, but in effect, it might have other outcomes. So I think we should be looking at it.
Yeah, I agree with everything that everybody else has said. The design of the whole taser use policy was actually predicated on the idea that you might not have to fire these a lot or discharge them. Sorry to stay consistent with my own language. And that, in fact, the display might be the biggest, the strongest trump that you need. And I think in some of the cases that we have reviewed so far, that's proven to be true. But there is the possibility that, as for particular offenders or situations, that rubric could kind of get turned upside down. And from a real sort of, in my mind, a more common sense level, in the absence of body cameras, the taser gives us the only opportunity that exists to record audio and video at the scene remote from the squad car. So it fills out, the bubble of our knowledge in a significant way. Now, I'm not suggesting that I want people to activate, display the tasers just as a substitute for a body camera, obviously. But when that happens, I think we find out a lot about how our police work. And my mind goes back to one of the first cases that I reviewed with Tony's help up in one of the rooms. And we were going through all the CDs and stuff like that, and it was kind of, I couldn't get the system to work, and it was a little bit hard to figure out exactly which CDs I needed to look at in the first place. And we were just beginning the system, and the taser had been lit for a while, and I was able to but very clearly pick up the language use and protocol. And I made a note about the use of the female voice in one of these cases, and I think I learned a lot about how policing is done right at that instant when this man that was just in distress, heard a softer tone, and that changed the way that situation could have rolled out. And without the audio and video on the taser, I would have never learned just how smart sometimes our police are in terms of their sort of tactical approach to things. So anyway, that's a long-winded.
I'm working on a continuing education training curriculum for 2017 for the board. And I wanted to ask, how many of you have had an opportunity to engage in that shooting simulation program? Okay. Okay. Can you make a note of who is? So we have Scott, Grace, and Diane. Okay. I would like to have you have a refresher just for that eye-opening experience. Also, ride-alongs. We're going to create a schedule for ride-alongs for you. I know that Mikhail has done a few already. And so I'd like to make sure that we're doing one at least quarterly if possible. And so we're going to come up with a schedule, and we'll reach out to you and find out what days and times are best for you so that we can work with the police department to get you set up. Additionally, I wanted to mention to you that the legislature passed some legislation that requires now the school system and some other driver's ed components to begin to do training on how to manage the officer-civilian interaction. And I'm looking forward to what that's going to look like. That is going to be implemented, I assume, throughout 2017. And as soon as I hear more information about that, I will communicate it to you. I know that the NAACP has some literature out there. We have some literature out there. Champaign has some literature out there that you can put in your car. And we'll see how that develops, and if there's a need for the board to assist or to participate in any way. I'm sure that anything in education has curricula, and they have resource networks, and I'm sure they're already working through how they're going to do that. But that will be forthcoming. Additionally, I wanted to mention that
Alex?
Yes.
I'm sorry, can I interrupt you for a second? I would hope that we could substitute anything that the board needs to participate in with anything the board has the opportunity to participate in. In preliminary discussions with the superintendent of schools, I think that the door is open for us to be able to be active and to use this as a way to drill into the high school here in Urbana. And I would hope that we would take advantage of that. I owe Grace an apology. I've already apologized to Alex for bringing this to the superintendent without kind of talking this through with anybody else. And so I just kind of got excited and shot out an email. But I think, you know, as I go back to the things that we've been able to do with kids, the true success, Grace, that you drove largely about those kind of interactions at the high school, that's the kind of stuff I just wish that we could, you know, multiply as often as we can. I've kept a look in the paper and kind of tried to follow this a little bit. Since this is mandated, I see the Springfield FBI are in the process of making a tape. And I think there's a lot of opportunity to take, you know, existing content that I found on YouTube or those kind of things to be able to implement that. And so I'm hoping that we can work with kids in schools with content that's pretty real life to them. And I'm not saying that the FBI stuff won't be real life, but that carries sort of a weight of its own. Anyway, I appreciate everyone's.
And I don't know if it's directly related or even on topic, but I just remember when we did those simulations, it gave me an incredibly direct understanding of the role of a police officer and the kinds of situations that he or she can be in. Is there anything equivalent for the role of the person who's confronted with a police officer? Because I don't think most of us, I shouldn't speak for everyone, but I know I have never been in, except for when I was protesting the war in Vietnam, I have never been confronted by an officer of the law. And so while I feel a much better understanding of what it feels like on the side of the law enforcement, I wish there were some simulations or some kinds of sources of information for us to feel like the person who is the alleged offender or suspected offender or perp. Do we know of anything? Do these situations you're talking about maybe show both sides of the interaction?
Yeah, I'd be happy to forward a couple of URLs around. I'll pass them to Alex. The ones that I've been shopping around for most recently are the ones that relate to traffic stops, and I think that's the first, you know, that's where a lot of that interaction takes place. But there are some real interesting topics, you know, consent searches. I mean, it's a pretty, you can get in pretty deeply, you know, in a 10 or 15 minute video, and I think there's some good both sides. You know, the ACLU does stuff like this, and there's stuff out there like that. So
the last two items that I wanted to mention to you is in 2017, I'd like to do some substantive work with you and with the community and have a discussion. There is an opportunity to assist the community and law enforcement. We're in a very tense place right now in our journey. Law enforcement feels deeply concerned about the public trust issues, the legitimacy, questioning of legitimacy, and our particular police department, as well as others, are feeling the impact of that tension. And as Diane's pointed out, the community, especially the vulnerable parts of our community, are extremely afraid and concerned. And even with our law enforcement, because of what they see nationally and because of experiences that they have had within the community. And so that's all you need to have a bad outcome, a very tense law enforcement and a very tense community. And it reminds me of any relationship, whether it's a daughter and a son that are very tense and they enter into an interaction, or a husband and wife who are very tense, and then you're approaching that situation from that tension point, and it could create bad outcomes. And so there is an opportunity both for the Human Relations Office and for the Civilian Police Review Board to begin to outreach even further in terms of how to facilitate that relationship. And we do it through part of our processes, but there'll be opportunities in some of our outreach to see how we can begin to foster that. I believe that we enjoy and are earning an ongoing esteem of the community and of the police department through our objectivity, our impartiality, our thoroughness, our consistency, and those are things that we can continue to do. But there is going to be an opportunity for greater outreach to the communities and to the law enforcement community. One of the things that, as Scott mentioned a few moments ago, when it comes to the encounter, right, that's when the bad outcome or the poor outcome can happen. It would be my expectation and my hope that the school systems and the driver's education providers are going to utilize the skill set of law enforcement. Law enforcement is an SME, a subject matter expert on that. And it would be important for us to be able to contribute also the oversight component, which is our expertise. That if you are uncomfortable with the interaction point is not the time to address that. There is a time, and in Urbana it's done this way. In Champaign it's done this way. If it involves a sheriff, it's done that way. And so to be able to continue to provide education around what are your rights to civil rights, and what are your rights to receive constitutional service. And so those are things that I'm hoping that is something that we bring as a board, in addition to whatever law enforcement might bring as one of the parties in that dynamic. So I am looking forward to mentioning that. And then finally, the last item I wanted to mention is that the crime analyst was hired, and she is approaching, I believe, 2 and some months of employment. She is finalizing a report on a new benchmark to measure disparity, and that is using traffic accident data as a sample of what the driving population might be, and also looking at the outcomes from stops. And it is the hope that the report will be finalized on Friday, and then it'll be transmitted to the City Council for them to review. Presentation will then occur, I believe in November, sometime maybe November 7th, to the City Council. And so I will be emailing you so that you can tune in to that City Council meeting from home or your phone, or if you want to come in person. And then there'll be an opportunity for question and answer from the council at a subsequent meeting. So that will be forthcoming to continue to look at the nature of traffic stops in Urbana and what lessons can be learned. And again, always, we are doing this to know what is our current state and to know where we are, and not to disparage or to engage in any other kind of inquiry other than, are we the best we can be and how can we continue to improve? And so that's just a little update on where the disparity study is at the moment. And that's all we have for today.